Hello there everybody, this is Wolfe VGC. Yes, I know, I am a guy. I just casually have my in-game username as Honeybun, and it has been that way for years. To simply go over it, our very first video on discussing every single Pokemon in the entire Pokedex, from basically looking on it competitively in their respective formats. So we'll be starting from the very beginning of the Pokedex with Bulbasaur, which we'll be talking about it in the sense of the little cup format, because why would you ever use this thing in Ubers? Alright, so Bulbasaur, which typically is, it's a respectable Pokemon. In the Kanto region, it's actually the best Pokemon to actually do the entire game with. They're the second most resistant type in the entire game for any other typing if they're taking damage from them, if that makes any sense. Yeah, grass types are rather frail and are normally weak to fire, ice, flying, and I believe bug. There's one other one that I'm trying to remember. Poison, yeah, that's what it is. So, poison types are also weak to ground and psychic types. With the poison-grass combination, it's kind of an okay type. It resists two very major threatening, or actually, probably about 4 really major threatening types in competitive VGC. Water typing being extremely common and is also very threatening in the sense of rain teams, which can be devastating. Electric types, which are very fast Pokemon, can also dish out a lot of damage because a lot of electric types are very fast glass cannons. Fighting types, which are also resisted by a secondary poison type, can dish out a lot of physical damage but aren't typically known to be any of that. They're more physically defensive if anything. Resisting the grass type by 4 times amount is kind of a pointless resistance, except for the factor that it's practically immune to being spored or to sleep powder or actually no, it's not immune to rage powder because that's its own separate thing. But yeah, being resistant to electric, water, and fighting is really good, and having a resistance to one of the most overpowered types in the entire game offensively, fairy typing, is a really good resistance, because fairies are super common and are used to counter things such as Dark, Dragon, which is by far one of the most powerful types in the entire game, and Fighting, which deal a lot of damage. So being able to resist Fairy is a massive benefit along with Water, and being able to resist electric is also a really huge benefit. To go over it, that Bulbasaur itself is not overly that bulky on the physical side, so it has about 49 in defense, which is relatively abysmal for a starter. However, it has relatively decent special attack and special defense, with both evening out at 65 in both special attack and special defense. And its abilities are Overgrow, which basically increase its grass type move's power by 50% if it's on 1/4 of its HP. Combine that with Stab, which is, I think, same type advantage boost or whatever the heck that refers to. It basically means that if the move is the same type as the user, then it gets Stab, which then boosts that move's power by 50%. So if you're to use something like Giga Drain, which has the base power of 75, you're multiplying that by 2, so Giga Drain has a base power of 150 without really saying 150 in the actual game itself. But Chlorophyll is a relatively niche ability, so what makes it super useful though is the factor that it doubles the speed of your Pokemon when it's out in the sun. And what makes this ability so nice on, you know, something like Bulbasaur, including for the rest of its evolution line, is the factor that it gets growth and it gets synthesis. Synthesis increases the amount of which it heals, you know, the Pokemon that's using it by, I think, 75% from 50% if it's out in harsh sunlight. Growth, instead of it increasing, you know, your physical attack and special attack by 1 stage, it increases it by 2 stages, which practically doubles your attack. and your special attack. So that's always extremely nice to have if you're running like more of a power healing set, which would be really weird because you'd probably have to run like 3 different status moves, being Growth, Synthesis, and maybe Protect if you want to evade some kind of damage. You could also run Giga Drain if you don't want to run Synthesis, which I would probably do. Do something like Protect, Growth, then Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb. What's really nice about overall with Bulbasaur is that early on it does get Growth and it does get Leech Seed. However, your chances of encountering something that could set up the Sun early on in the game for you to get a really huge growth boost are relatively small, and you probably won't be able to really make use of growth unless if you're probably midway through the game and you encounter a fire type with Drought or with some other move that can set up the Sun like Sunny Day. Drought is, for what I know, only used by a couple of Pokemon, or has an ability, or is an ability of a couple of Pokemon, that being Torkoal, Groudon, Primal Groudon, which is basically just Drought, it like negates water type moves from being used, and there's one other one, I'm trying to remember what the hell it is. But either way, having Sunny Day set up is normally a really huge debuff to a lot of Pokemon because it increases fire type moves, which are ungodly powerful, so that always isn't overly too fun. So Bulbasaur would probably get wrecked by something like a Growlithe per se, or just by any fire type for that matter. However, if you could Terra or Terrasilize Bulbasaur into something that could benefit from the Sun with its Chlorophyll ability, like a fire type, that could be very useful because not only do you get a speed boost, but you're resistant to fire type moves. So there's always that. I mean, being able to have more resistances would also be really nice, because if you Terra Fire, then you basically gain resistances to Fire, Grass, Ice, Bug, Steel, and Fairy, with one of those weaknesses, or actually 2 of those weaknesses of grass types being completely negated, which are Fire and Ice, which are very common offensive types to be seen used in moves. So very good moves to use if you have something like Ice Beam or Blizzard if you're in the Hail, or if you have Flamethrower, Flare Blitz, and things like that. So Bulbasaur as is can probably be relatively tanky on the special defense side in Little Cup, but because Little Cup is a single battle format, there isn't really much that you can do with it. Potentially making it an electric type could also be very interesting with Terrassilization, because its only weakness then becomes ground, and if somebody were to send out a ground type against you, you can then just use a Giga Drain and wipe them off the face of the earth. So you could do that, and it's actually a relatively good gimmick. This is why I like Terrassilization so much. Now, Bulbasaur, yes, is fast in the Sun. Yes, it gets a lot of grass type moves. But there are a couple of other moves that make it relatively useful as a tank. As such, using something like Synthesis, Protect, Leech Seed, Sleep Powder, which is extremely nice to have. Put your enemies to sleep, you can then Leech Seed them, Growth maybe once or twice, and then Protect right as soon as you know that they're about to wake up. Because with Sleep Powder, the chances of it staying asleep for 3 turns are not guaranteed as with older generations. I'm pretty sure in Scarlet and Violet, they made it so that Spore doesn't keep your enemy asleep for exactly 3 turns like how Rest does. But in Spore in older generations would be just like Rest, where it would always keep you asleep for 3 turns. So Sleep Powder is kind of the exact same gist, except it can vary between 1 turn and to 3 turns. You just have to pray to God that you get 3. But you mainly just have to play around the chances of when is your opponent going to wake up. So you can do the statistics for all that. I don't really have the kind of time to deal with that. But overall, not Venusaur. Bulbasaur could also be kind of useful with a niche move called Acid Spray.
You serious?
But it's such a weak poison type move that using Sludge Bomb with a combination of Growth would just be better anyways. Venoshock could also be an interesting poison type move if paired with something like Poison Powder or Sludge Bomb for like the relatively small 30% chance of poisoning the target. But Venom Shock is just a waste of a move slot because you already have 2 poison type attacks in your limited 4 slots. It's also important to mention that Bulbasaur does get Terra Blast like every other Pokemon that can Terastallize, which if you want to make it something like the Fire type in Sun, you can boost a Fire type move using Terra Fire or Terra Blast Fire. Weather Ball could also be a really good option because then you can use 4 different typings, or technically 5: Normal, Rock, Water, Fire, and there's one other one. Trying to remember it. I think it's Ground. I think it's Ground. But either way, that Weather Ball can change into four different types. All right, yeah. It wasn't Ground that I was thinking of. It was Ice. So Fire, Water, Rock, and Ice are all the types that Weather Ball can become besides Normal without a weather effect. If there's no weather, its base power is 50, and the type of it is Normal. If there's any form of these following weather effects up, with bright sunlight being Fire, heavy rain being Water, sandstorm being Rock, and hailstorm being Ice, the base power of that move doubles to 100 for any one of these type of moves. And if Fog is, on the field, which I doubt would probably be a thing in this current generation, the normal type base 50 power is doubled, which is always really nice to see. So yeah, that's always really cool to see. But other than that, there isn't really much to point out on Bulbasaur. But if you guys have enjoyed my explanation of it, yeah, make sure to leave a like on the video, and don't forget to share around with your friends and subscribe to the channel if you want to see me continue an entire series going over every Pokemon, including every evolution, every little Cutmon, everything. So I'll be covering every Pokemon and how exactly that can be useful in certain kinds of formats. Yeah, my name is Honeybun. Peace out.